Just for those people who maybe don't know a bit of your story, just give us a snapshot of you grew up here in Montreal and your story of Christianity. How did that all begin?
Sure. So I went to a church in Laval, an evangelical church. I grew up very into my faith, very involved in it, and
from when you
very
were young,
serious.
From when you were young, you were always interested in God and church.
Completely. Yeah. And I think like a lot of kids, I really started taking it seriously when I was about 12, 13, and it really started to affect my life, and it changed how I thought about
belief, I guess.
Yeah, and my worldview and how I lived.
And it's that time where I think what your parents hand on to you needs to become your own. Almost.
Exactly, and it takes on a real purpose. It's not just a tradition, you know.
Yeah.
And then this sort of similar experience happened now recently.
Sure.
I started to look at my faith not just in the theological realm, but in the historical realm and how it's developed through time, basically.
The kind of the history of Christianity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my college and university sort of education really is what brought me to that understanding and brought me to appreciate history and to appreciate basically culture and how society influences how religion is developed and whatnot. And
for people who are not familiar with this, we've chatted a bit about this class that you took.
Yes.
Where you realized, hey, Christianity, maybe share a bit about that class on icons and art and kind of unlocked maybe these questions. You're like, whoa, I have a lot to kind of maybe read up on.
Of course.
Yeah.
So this was towards the end of my university education. I took a class on Christian iconography, which is basically Christian art.
Related to worship.
Exactly, related to worship. And it was mainly focused on sort of the more Eastern Christianity because that has a little bit more focus on the iconography.
Yeah.
And as I was there, I kept raising my hand asking questions about, well, why is Mary depicted in such a venerated fashion? Why is... And basically it got me into... And it got me into the theology a little bit more.
If we were to fast forward for some people, that class began a journey for you.
Yes.
And you began this internal dialogue, maybe at first, between how do I kind of respect the Protestant story I was given?
Absolutely.
And how do I work out the fact that I think being part of the Roman Catholic way of believing in God and Jesus feels more in line with what's going on in my heart. Like, why do I do that? So can you give people a snapshot of that next step for you?
Sure, yeah. If I wasn't Protestant, I don't think I would have looked into the Bible with such intensity to want to find out the roots.
Was it because your Protestant
passion,
upbringing taught you how to love the scriptures?
Exactly.
And how to at the 180, for people who are watching, I'm going to ask you about this. Is like, we've interviewed people who are atheists and have questions about faith. And now I think it's a great next step for us in light of the book of James to have an interview with somebody who's like, I think for me, you know, the disagreements or even the things in my heart that I was working out are what started to lead me toward the Roman Catholic tradition.
Right.
So how did you do that? Like, what were some of the steps?
The steps? Yeah, this continues on. It's sort of interrelated to the iconography and when I was in university, right?
In his class, yeah.
Yeah, so I was going through, the thing that troubled me was that Protestantism has so many denominations and so many sort of expressions. Yes, exactly. Notice there were some differences that made me uncomfortable in some of these Protestant denominational branches, which I thought were essential to some degree. And I thought, why are there so many divisions? And then aside from that, which division is correct or which divisions are most in line with biblical teaching?
This is helpful. I mean, and we're trying to capture for people kind of a long journey in a snippet of a short video.
Of course. Yeah.
But one of the things that I would love for us maybe to kind of change direction is that the book of James that we're looking at is just about to land us on a text that Catholics and Protestants, not only in Quebec, but in different contexts, have wrestled with. Are we saved by works? Are we saved by faith? Are we saved by Christ alone? Are we saved by right doctrine? Are we saved?
Yeah.
And you know, obviously the beauty of what Jesus does and the beauty of the Christian story is that both Catholics and Protestants would agree and have been working on clarifying each other's position on this, that we are saved by grace.
Yes.
Period. Full stop.
Yes.
So I think it's good to dispel the idea that if you're part of another branch of Christianity like Catholicism, like you're trying to earn God's love, right? Which is such a... So for you, was that a shock to be like, well, I had a misunderstanding about this?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things. Because the information that was always given to me from Protestants was that Catholics,
snapshot or a little bit skewed, or
exactly, it was always a misconception. It was that Catholics earned their way to salvation, or they worked their way there, and some of them do, but I think some Protestants do too. We can both agree on the main sort of tenets, but we might just explain it differently.
We can affirm together that it is in the merits of Christ alone that all of this really holds together.
Yes.
And whether we have the words or the intelligence to articulate that well yet, we're probably not there yet. There's still division. There's still, and our hope is not that this video would somehow convey like, oh, we agree on everything. I mean, there's a lot of differences. But we can work through those differences in a God-honoring way, or in a divisive way that leads to really destruction and real division in the church. And that's unfortunately happening for a lot of people. So Justin, I can't thank you enough for letting us into a little bit of this story. I want to thank the people at the 180, because I'm so blessed to be the pastor in a church where people are really open to being a different kind of church, and to really creating a space for this kind of dialogue. And I know people watching that's not always comfortable, but James calls us to become mature and to make room for Jesus to teach us new things like this. And so I'm so grateful for the people that are part of our church. And so our hope is that this video is the beginning of this conversation. So we're grateful for your insights today. Thanks,
Great.
bud.
Awesome. Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Bye.